Our next contest for the Better Photography Weekly Challenge is Reveries of a Minimalistic World. Our judge and mentor is Janvi Sharma. Janvi is an independent visual artist with a background in journalism, modern and contemporary Indian art, as well as curatorial studies. Janvi works with multiple media and materials to pursue her research interests that lie primarily in ecofeminism, migration, and memory. She has published and exhibited her work relating to these subjects, both locally and internationally. She is currently earning her MFA Fine Arts from Nottingham Trent University, London.
Hi,
Hi, Janvi.
Nilufer,
How are you?
for having me here. I'm really excited to see the submissions that come. Uh, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the background of the theme that we are discussing, since I've not really included the history, of the movement in the slideshow at all. I've only kept it contemporary. So the minimalistic art movement basically came about in like the 1970s, post World War II, and it was sort of an amalgamation of abstract expressionism and modernism. And you have these Marcel Duchamp, he comes to mind, Pete Mondrian comes to mind, but a few artists that people should know. I mean, of course, these are fine artists, but I think it's always interesting to consume a lot of art and literature, minimalistic art and minimalistic literature, to then eventually understand the concept properly. So I would recommend seeing the works of Nasreen Mohammadi. For the want of a better word, her work is astounding. Uh, she uses really like hair thin lines and intersections of lines and planes and grids, and works with themes of faith. She works very closely with Islamic architecture. And we have a similar artist called Zarina Hashmi, who recently passed away, but she's a print-based artist who works with sculpture and the ideas of home and partition and boundaries. So I think it is to understand where this started and why people started this reductionist, aesthetic of the less is better and the decluttering of things. I think it's interesting to look back into where it began and to see the pioneers of people who worked on it. I mean, yeah, let's start sharing the screen now. Okay, a little bit of a background about myself. Before I picked up photography, I spent like about 6 to 7 years pursuing drawing and painting. So that sense of line work, the sense of design, sort of very organically, I think, trickled down in my photography as well. So I'm still somebody, even with a camera, I'm still very attracted to lines and shapes and forms. So this image is something that I made 2 months ago. I call it state of mind. It was quite literally the time when I was circling in my head, I was doing cartwheels in my head about moving to another country and not knowing whether it's a good decision, given the times. And we keep these bird feeders outside in Arang in Nasik. So I was just playing around with a stick. I found a stick of daisy actually, and I dipped it in the water, which was particularly still that day. And it made those concentric circles and the form. And it looked like an interesting shape. So the diptych was made with the intention of creating this image together. What I also do sometimes is just like go back to my archives and find images, put them together. I think it's an interesting process to edit it and create diptychs. But this image was created with the intention of making it look the way it is. It's a self-portrait. And I think it was a pretty apt depiction of what I was feeling back then. So these are, again, the two other promotional images that I'd given you. So I thought I would discuss these first. When you think of minimalism in photography, one of the first things that comes to mind is the idea of the empty frame. I mean, what does the empty frame stand for? What does it synonymize in your practice? Personally, for me, I think the idea of isolation is very attractive. The emotion of, well, the sweet melancholia is something that attracts me. And I see such empty vastness in frames, and I'm I feel like making an image out of it because it resonates with a lot of what I feel. but it could mean so many other things. You know, it could mean organized calm, because whenever you see something that's neat and that's well organized, you are naturally quite attracted to it. So it would be interesting before you make an image and before you pursue minimalism to understand how you can play with the empty frame and how you can use it. The image on the left is one I made during the monsoons. And what I like about is the way that the tree is tilting to the right, the raindrops are sort of moving to the right, and so is the cloud. It's almost as if it's the image in its entirety, it's leaning a little towards the right. And there's a sway to it, there's a lilt in the image. And I really like that about it. It's a movement, you know, a sense of movement in the photograph. And the one on the right is from my ongoing series called Extensions. I have always been really attracted to hair and the motif of a braid, you know, it resonates, it echoes nature's forms in my head. So I wanted to do this for a long time, and I finally got to do this last year, where I exaggerated the braid. You know, I added a lot of extensions and I created this unrealistically long braid and played with it. The reason why I think this image works better as a triptych is because there's a sense of confrontation there. There's a sense of dialogue that a person is having with the braid. I mean, it's almost as if, you know, you see in a conversation when, or an argument where there is one person who's saying something, the other person is sort of trying to negotiate. There is somebody who dominates it. The second frame is like, you know, almost as if the braid is taking over the conversation, and the third one is a sense of acceptance. So when you see it all together, I think there's a sense of dialogue and confrontation there that I found interesting, you know, to play with. So that's that. So a little bit about, you know, what is the conventional meaning of minimalism. If you type minimalistic photographs on Google, you'll probably find images like these. These are, I would say, design-based images. You see a lot of unrealistic play of color and of shape, but it's very interesting to look at, and it's really interesting to play with, because it creates this otherworldly dimension to things, you know, this very animated sort of a reality. And the left is a person called Yaoi Kusuma. She is a brilliant minimalist. If you have to look into somebody who works with color and, you know, the sense of monotone. And the image on the right also, I think, is it's like being a part of a painting. You know, there's a painterly sense to it. So these are just a few examples to give of what it can be like, you know, conventionally. But since this is the more perceived sense of minimalism, I also want to talk about what it can also be, you know, in the coming slides. So yeah. Yeah, so this is another one of my images. I've put it all together and I call it the reach, the sense of reach. And I play with a lot of elements in my immediate biodiversity. I think gardens have been my biggest inspiration, always, wherever I am. And I like to play with motifs of flowers and leaves and the sunlight and this sense of reach, the sense of longing and belonging that comes with you know, nature's elements. And yeah, I think this is just here to give you an example of how you can play with shapes and forms in black and white minimalism. Yeah. And yeah, so I put this here together because, again, like, these are all images of nature. I wanted to talk about the possibility of having a fuller frame as well. I mean, it's not just about the empty frame all the time, but what you highlight in the full frame is also important. So how would you perhaps shoot nature and like a place with foliage, and, like, you know, you have a maximalist frame in front of you and you want to find minimalism in it. So this is just an example of that. You know, you could highlight color, you could highlight a shape or a form of the stem. You could see the image on the bottom right, you have the shape of the stream, you know, the way in which the wildflowers are going. There's a slight curve there, and I think that's the focus of the story. The neck of the peacock, the color of the wildflower. There's the second one from the bottom is the image that I made in Jim Corbett, and it was the receding sunlight of the day sort of falling only on the berries of the tree. So the only thing that was highlighted in that image was the orange of the berries. And even though it's a full frame, even though it has so much in it, I think it's still a minimalistic image. It can still constitute as minimalistic image because, you know, it's highlighting only one motif of the form. So just an example of what else you might explore, because it's not always possible to find emptier design-based frames. So yeah. Okay, minimalism and body. The thing to keep in mind when you're shooting body is that it's not just about the frontality of it, the physicality of it, the blemish, the scars, but it is also all the intangible things that make you whole. It is also identity, you know, it is also fears and anxieties and insecurities that come in place. So I think and self-portraits, I think, are really a powerful tool to explore, simply because using body as a material, it just adds another dimension to it. It is not just autobiographical work, but it is also a work that sort of embraces change and impermanence, because one of the things to keep in mind about body is the fact that it's always changing. So the first frame here, I call it the evolution of a wing. It's basically, I found a stick of mushrooms, and but the way the mushrooms were distanced from each other and the lean of the stick itself, it was almost as if they were joints. You know, there was, if you place them against your arm, it looks like the joints and the bolts, basically. And I just wanted to sort of emphasize on the bendability of the limb here, on the fact that it can actually, your arm can actually be you know, something else, to focus on the fact that we're made of so many joints and so many ways to move. So that's that. The second one, I call it changing insides. What I've done is I've actually used paper cuts. The first image, in the second one, the left side of the image, you have that stark tree that you see, that empty tree. I've actually carved it out in paper, and I've projected a flashlight against it, created that shadow, and you know, composed myself there. And the image on the right is the one that I found first. So I sort of imagined the gladiola and the tree together, and how there's a similarity in the form, there's an imitation there, and to sort of project myself onto that change and use my own body and talk about everything that's changing inside. And yeah, that is that image, and that's the thought. And the third one, I would perceive body as vessels there, you know, as a storage unit, as a place to keep things, as a place to store memories and fears and, you know, everything else. So this is something that you can do at home. It's an indoorsy image if you have somebody who's ready to volunteer for you and experiment around. So I call it, you know, it looks like a vase as a vessel. So these are just like a few various ways in which you can approach body as material in minimalism. Yeah. Lines are extremely important, of course. I mean, the more conventional minimalistic photographs would use, you know, architectural lines, these very linear, very edgy sort of lines. And what I wanted to focus on was the distorted, the crooked, the non-linear lines that are present in and around you. Maybe it's the cracks of the wall, maybe it's the, you know, lines of your body, the wrinkles of your skin. The image in the middle is of a peace lily, and I find it extremely beautiful because, you know, that stem, the seed stem inside the peace lily, it grows before the petal around it does. So what happens is the thorny structure is already created and then the petal is formed. So even before the flower blooms, it has hurt itself. It has those holes in it because, you know, of the pokey insides. And I think it's such a cathartic thing to think about, that you may be born, you know, with so much that's going on inside you already. You know, you may have a lot of pain inside you already. I don't know if, yeah. uh, but, you know, also to explore the geometry of the biology there. There's so much symmetry. There's so much uh, a sense of, you know, structure inside the flower that is interesting to look at. So that's that. The image on the right is the one that I made in Ladakh last year. And I call it a wrinkle in time because God knows how many rocks it must have taken to place it in the way that it is, how many years of accumulated snow for that line to be formed on the mountain. And it was such a inviting visual. I mean, it just stood out because it was just like a line that was going vertically upwards, and it was an entity in itself, you know, not just a part of the mountain. So that's that. And the left one, I call it nurture. It's just something I made in my garden. I saw a purple sunbird trying to feed its babies, and I found the wildflowers that it was feeding in. So I just created something together. But the interesting thing is the line below the sunflower that you see, the crookedness there. I think that adds the texture and the feel of the image and makes it interesting. The next one. How can imitations of form and repetitions of form play a role in minimalistic photography? I think if you take something unusual and unprecedented and repeat it enough, it emphasizes a new narrative. And that's an interesting way to create images, is to find repetitions of form around you, repetitions in body language, say repetitions in you know, in just the way things are. So the left one is a ballerina's pirouette and a lily, and blooming lilies seen together. There's imitation of form in the pattern of the sari and the plant. And the right one is an image that I made in Pondicherry. And, you know, you have these beautiful kids playing in the sea and the mothers sort of overlooking them. And I wanted to have the image. It's one of my favorite photographs made by me, to be honest. I think it is so tender and so fiercely beautiful, because it's such a familiar visual to have your mothers like overlook you while you play, to make sure that you're not, you know, getting in trouble, getting hurt. And the motifs on the gown, the motifs of the floral motifs on the gown just like really add to it. I think they add the tenderness in the photograph. So that. Now, a few images by some really extraordinary artists that I absolutely admire. The left one is Rema Chaudhary. She does really beautiful fashion photography mostly. And it would be interesting to look into her work because she has a commendable sense of spatial context. I think she uses the landscape around her beautifully. But I chose this image because she calls it cow. It looks like a crow, but it's actually like the swing of the hair that's making it look like that. Like, imagine just a singular line placed in the way that it is placed makes a person look like a crow. And there's such a humorous element to it, you know. There's beauty to it and the obscurity to it, and I think it's a beautiful photograph. And on the right is Catherine Koenig. She is amazing, and this is her work called "The Kids Are in Trouble." It's a commentary on, you know, the incipient climate crisis and how the kids are going to be facing it eventually. But the way she's done it is so subtle and so minimalistic. I mean, a huge body of work. You can find it on her website and on Instagram. You should see all of it to understand the language that she has created to tell that story. It is almost as if she's telling the story of the kids through the curiosity of the kids eye, if a kid were to talk about it. So there's a beautiful sense of curiosity and tenderness in the way she's documented this series. And I think why this is important to look into is also to see how just the narrative, if you have in place, how that can, really steer your aesthetic. It will help you compose things if you have the story in place, So that's something to look into. Okay, Ashima Raizadeh, I mean, if you have to talk about minimalism and you don't mention her work, I think that would just be unfair. There's a fecundity of imagination in what she does. What I like about her work the most is that there's a sense of fragmentation, there's a sense of dislodged, dismantled sense of imagery sort of put together to make it a whole. And she's created a new language of minimalism. I think she uses found objects, she uses body and photographs and drawing together, and documentary and stage to work together, and all of it has so much context in it. The story stands out, even though it's really simple things and really ordinary things that she uses to tell the story. So I would highly recommend looking into Ashima's work, just to understand what else you can do with minimalism. She goes beyond the ordinary, and even though she's using ordinary things, so it's beautiful. I think you should look into it. Yeah. I think the sense of scale also is something to think about when you're making simplistic images. Is the far-reaching vastness of 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 the background. It's not always possible to be in such exotic places, so it's interesting to look into how you might be able to play with it anyway, because the image on the right is by Zara Amiruddin, and I absolutely love the image because of the sense of insignificance of the person against the geography in itself. It makes you pause and it makes you stay with it. I think the texture in the sky is really grand and really beautiful, and it's such an exotic image, such a beautiful exotic image. And if you are ever in like landscapes like this, I think it would be interesting to play with scale and the perspective against which you're shooting. So if this image was, say, made from a bit closer, if that entire tree was not a part of this image, would it be this beautiful? Would it be this extraordinary? I mean, the farther you go in landscapes like this, the better sometimes. And this is just an example of that. The image on the left is, I wanted to include this to talk about how to find like minimalistic isolated images in a crowded space. That's not very easy to do. When you're doing street photography, or when you're shooting a place with a lot of crowd, it's often it's often very difficult to find such singularity of elements there. But I guess it comes with practice, and it comes with waiting for the moment to happen. It comes with a lot of patience. But it's really interesting how this image has played with reflections as well. It's like, such verticality of people, but also in their isolated units, even though they are together. And I think it's an interesting way to look at shooting crowds, Yeah. The sense of color in minimalism. As a painter, I mean, I'm so confused and conflicted with color, and I really, really admire people who work with it so beautifully as these two here. I often shoot in color, and because I'm so attracted to line work, I end up converting most of my images into black and white. And because I feel I get distracted with color sometimes, and I think it comes with wanting to control it too much, because I used to do that so much with painting, you know. So I'm getting there. I'm slowly trying to get there. But these images here, the right one by Kanegi Khanna, I think it is a masterful photograph. It is, first of all, such a familiar visual. The idea of chat, the idea of a terrace, you know. I come from a small town, and the thing I miss most about it is the access to the terrace that I've not gotten in so many years. And this really small town visual, this really familiar visual, becomes so extraordinary because of the sense of color there. The sky, the flooring of the chat, the salwar kameez she's wearing, all of it is almost the same shade, the same color, but of different shades. And it's such a lyrical photograph. And I think that little bit of breeze just adds to it. It just like freezes something so beautifully. And the left one is a recent image made by Deepti Asthana in Meghalaya. And of course, the sense of color here is great. It's dual tones. It's green and purple, and just the right shade of green and purple. I mean, I would draw this color palette. I love it that much. But I also love the house in the background. It's such a house that's a motif. Like if you would draw homes when you were a kid, you would possibly draw homes like this. It would have a conical roof. It would have like 2 windows and, you know, well lit. It's such a house, you know, that the quaint house that you really immediately fall in love with. And there's a sense of backlit receding sunlight, the last bit of light, I guess, of the day, and the flowers in the foreground. I think it's such a wholesome image. It has everything that you would want to sort of use from the bucolic charms of rural life, you know. And yeah, these are just 2 examples to maybe use color. Of course, you have a few artists that use really bright, saturated colors and juxtapose it well. And it's never discouraging you from doing that. But I think the subtle monotones, the subtle use of color is what attracts me more. Yeah. It's, if you're talking about minimalism and you don't talk about object and material memory, again, is would be incorrect, because when minimalism as a movement came about, what started happening was in the galleries of you know, these well far-reaching abstractionists, you know, with powerful brushstrokes and everything, you suddenly have like people using found objects and placing them in the galleries. And the art critiques back then were infuriated by the audacity of, you know, just like placing an object in the gallery and calling it art. What do you mean by that? I mean, but and Marcel Duchamp's toilet is one of the things that come to mind. I mean, it was quite a controversy. But in photography and objects, I mean, I think one of the activities to do to keep in mind is to find how much attached you are to certain things in the house. And a way of doing it is to, again, like, bear with me for putting this dystopia here, but like just as an exercise, imagine if your house is on fire or if your house is flooding, what are the few things that you would want to grab in the house? And why are those things that you would want to grab so important to you? And what are the things that you would not even think about before abandoning, and why? And how then would you photograph these images? You know, Achal Malhotra's Remnants of Separation comes to mind when you have to talk about object and material memory. She's made a book of, you know, all the things that people grabbed during the time of partition. They took just a handful of things, whatever you could carry, and how those objects, how those books, whether it is books, whether it is photographs, whether it is jewelry, whether it is like fabrics or textiles, all the things around, and how a simple everyday object can have so much emotion into it. And it may not be a grand photograph, but it will still be a powerful photograph because of the sentimental value it holds. So keeping that in mind, I wanted to speak about Stasia de Souza's series of abandoned objects found on beaches. And as a whole, it's a beautiful series to see. But I chose these two images because of the colors again, the bright colors against dull sands, but also the textures that come in place with the waves, and how that adds another dimension to the image. The narrative, of course, is so beautiful and powerful already, but also the things that she chooses to photograph, say so much about the photographer. It's a doll sometimes, it's a broken shoe sometimes, it's a toy or a bird sometimes, So of all the things that wash ashore, the few things that Stasia chooses to highlight are beautiful to look into. So yeah. And finally, minimalism and context. I mean, can there be one single narrative or one single point of the story, the vantage point, say, that could make the image minimalistic? Not just the aesthetic here, I'm talking about the story. Like the image on the left is by Milo Anka, and even though it's such a simple image, it says so much. It says so much about human intervention in wild places. It says so much about invasion of wild spaces, and the way that sapling is sort of just fallen and downtrodden by a giant human foot. It says a lot about the story behind it. And this is again my perception of things. This is not necessarily the way the artist would describe the image, but when you have to not see the text, when you have to just see the image in itself, it says a lot. It is one of those kind of images that could mean 1,000 words or whatever. So that's why I put it here, just to understand how a singularity of context can work with minimalistic photography. And the image on the right, I mean, even before this assignment, even before this task of putting the PPT together, I've saved this image for many months now, since she posted it. Rebecca Norris Webb, who is brilliant in every way possible. But this is an image of a giraffe. Now, when you think of shooting giraffes, you would obviously want to shoot the neck, right? The neck of the giraffe, which is the most exaggerated element of the giraffe's body. It's the grand neck, the graceful neck. But here she's talking about the extinction of giraffes. So the story is about the extinction and the receding numbers of giraffes in the world. And to do that, instead of focusing on the entire animal itself, the photograph is of the pregnant belly of the giraffe. And it's such a tender image, if at one glance, the way the legs are placed, it is almost human. It is so human, and you wonder what it is till you read about it. And it gave me goosebumps, this image. And I just had to put it in just to describe how, if you have the story in place, you would choose such perspectives, and you would, want to take the audience into the story. Like, she's almost dragging you to see the belly of the giraffe. So yeah, this is the context that is important to keep in mind, I think. Yeah. That's it. I mean, this is the last photograph. It's from a fashion shoot I did for Chaurangi Bazaar, and it's empty and it's singular. There's just two birds flying about. I think just to end it, this was a free, happy note to end it with. So, but if anybody has any questions or doubts, I'm very much available for them to approach and get in touch. I would do my best to help out. Yeah.